Hi, and welcome to Health Specialties, an introduction to shoes from Dr. Trites. Let's start with structure. The most important body part, other than your brain, is your feet. And that's because you have numerous ligaments or limited musculature in your foot, and it connects to the rest of your body. Your feet are a foundation for the rest of your body. Think of the feet as a base or a foundation for a pyramid. Everything above the pyramid or any structure that you're building above it, if it's not proper, can fall out of place. And there are millions of proprioceptors responsible for pressure and temperature and contractile strength that are located in the feet and aren't located anywhere else in the body. And this allows for what's called kinesthetic awareness. An athlete that can jump in air and can actually move or seemingly defies gravity has more proprioceptors or more kinesthetic awareness than somebody who doesn't. So as we age and as we have injuries or don't take care of our feet, these proprioceptors start to break down, our kinesthetic awareness breaks down, and unfortunately the rest of the body that's above it breaks down as well. There are actually three arches in your foot, but the one we're going to take a look at, which most everybody knows, is the main longitudinal arch. This is the middle or most important, and it will drop within proper supporting shoes such as loafers or flip-flops or incorrect lacing. They also will go flat, or the main longitudinal arch will drop in the event that somebody walks around barefoot all the time on hard surfaces like linoleum or concrete or hardwood floors without any type of support. It's just a matter of gravity. Over time, that foot will start to break down. So here's a picture of someone who has a very high arch. You can see the imprint of the heel and the imprint of the forefoot. There's no anything in between. If you have a high arch, that's actually a better scenario than a low arch. But when you're trying to put on shoes or wear anything that has any type of support, there'll be a gap between your foot and where the arch is. And we actually have to use an orthotic to go up and meet it so that the foot doesn't drop down. Then we have to make sure you lace your shoes properly and don't get like loafers. Sandals for this type of person is just going to kill them. This is a fallen arch. This is what you see about 60 to 70 years old, but we see so many children walk in the door, teenage and below, because what became popular in the late 90s, early 2000 was everybody needed to wear sandals to school. And now it's everybody needs to wear house shoes or something that has no support to it. And the foot is just breaking down. So if you get out of the shower or you're walking on the beach and in sand you see one of these two foot, you know that your foot isn't functioning properly, and you may need to use an orthotic, in which case we do that in our office. Injury prevention. Choosing your shoes. There are 5 steps to choosing your shoes, and then there are 3 steps to creating longevity and stability in those shoes that you do choose. The first thing we're going to talk about is the correct shoe length. Most people tend to like snug fitting shoes. This actually increases injuries, illness, fatigue, and of course depression. You never would have thought depression would have been caused from a short shoe, but if you have a structure that's being broken down, that structure changes the chemistry in the body. The chemistry in the body leads to organic issues, including depression and anxiety. A short shoe will actually turn off 122 of the 635 skeletal muscles, and that's roughly 17% of all your muscles. So if you have 2 shoes that are too small, then you have about 34% of your muscles turn off. Now you think about that throughout the day. If you're not like in a athletic performance, it's not really that big a deal. But the rest of the body has to compensate for that. So if you have a tendency to get ill or you're tired and fatigued, you're just adding to the problem. So the first step is to make sure that you have at least 1 thumb length from the end of your shoe to your longest toe. Sometimes somebody has a second toe that's bigger, and it needs to be on their longest foot. Most people have about a half shoe size bigger on one foot than the other. And it's your anatomical thumb. And it goes, it's not the thumb of your mother or father or friend or the salesperson. It's your thumb. So it goes from the end of the shoe back, and that's where your biggest toe should touch. Shoes that taper a bit at the end must be sized from the end, as it actually would make them smaller. Think of something like a heel or a cowboy boot where they taper and they point. You actually have to buy a bigger shoe because that what's called toe box has broken down. Also, there are shoes that have a rounded toe box. In track and field, they have a spike that does that. Golf shoes will do that. Certain boots will do that. They'll taper at the end. Well, you have to actually get a little bit bigger size because Even though the length is a size 8, the tapering in is bigger. So you have to think you're going to have to get a little bit bigger shoe. But that said, don't assume you have a set shoe size. Always try your shoes on first before you purchase them. They're going to change every year. With your shoes, make sure that each side of your shoe isn't touching the outside of the ankle bone, or what's called the lateral malleoli. These are the bumps that sit on the outside of both ankles. And if the shoe that touches it, it'll literally tap the bone, which is called the talus, out of place. This talus is very important as it causes ankle, knee, hip, and opposite shoulder pain. It can also break down the body and cause an immune issue. Number 2, push the back of the shoe in a pinching fashion. If the counter or heel goes in, you're going to actually push toward the toes. If it goes in, it won't support the foot at all. Then we're actually going to push the sides together in the same pinching manner, and if the sides go together again, this will not support the foot. So here's an example of it. We don't actually have you pushing the back of the heel, but that's what you want to do first. It's the very first thing I do when I pick up a pair of shoes. And the second thing I do is I pinch the counter. This counter right here is just falling apart right on us. It's dropping in. It's not going to support a foot. Number 3, we want to make sure the shoe bends at the widest point. So what I do is I take a pin and I roll it down to the widest point of your shoe, and we make a mark on the side. Then we push the shoe together on both ends, from the counter and from the toe, and we want to see, did it bend at the mark? Is there a break there? What a break is a line that usually goes across the shoe. That's more of a divot that goes across the shoe, not just a little divot, all the way across. And sometimes they put 3 of these on here, which is actually ridiculous. You only have one part in your foot that bends, called the ball of your foot, and the shoe should bend at the ball of your foot. So we want to see, is there a break there? If there isn't a break there, then that shoe is going to support your foot. If you answer no to any of these, it'll hinder your muscle strength, and in time your health, and for an athlete, it'll hinder performance. So on your slide here, you're going to see that I have a pin, and we have rolled it down to the widest part of the shoe. And on the inside of the shoe, you'll see that there's a white strap. There's actually 2 white straps that go all the way across the shoe. There's 2 breaks on this shoe. And one of these breaks just happens to be just a shade below where my pin would touch. We don't get real picky on that. That's really close. But now we need to make sure that the shoe actually bends where it breaks. So with an individual that had no idea what they were doing, push from both ends, you can see that the shoe breaks, and where the bend is all the way through there, you can see that there's 2 breaks that look like little divots in the white, what's called EVA midsole that's on there. And on the sole of the shoe, there's a break above that the shoe doesn't even bend, so it was pointless to put the bend there, the break there. But the other break down below, where the shoe is actually bending, if you look from where the toe is bending at the top and all the way down to the shoe, it's almost breaking in a nice fashion at almost a 90-degree angle all the way through that break. So even though the widest point of the shoe was just a shade above it, this shoe is breaking what we consider acceptable. Perfect would be maybe a millimeter or so back, but we're not going to get that picky because it is kind of hard to find shoes. But you'll find a lot of shoes that have been right in the front or been right in the middle of the shoe that are absolutely worthless. Number 4, uniformity design. We need to look at the back of the shoe. Does the seam come up the back straight? Does it match your Achilles tendon? You should know what your Achilles tendon is by now. If you pull up your shoe when you're standing in it, you should see how that the back of the shoe, if it doesn't have a seam, just take the counter. Your Achilles tendon should be right in the middle of that counter. If not, it's not going to support you. You have incorrect fitting shoes. When shoes are made, the left shoe and the right shoe is not made on the same day. They're not even created necessarily equally. You could have more carbon on one shoe. We've had many collegiate teams walk in our door with the same problems for multiple athletes. And it came down to they were running for a certain brand, and that brand broke down, and they all seemed to have the same problem because the carbon fiber wasn't the same on one shoe as it was in the other. And guess what? They had a millimeter to 2 millimeter, which is absolutely nothing, difference between left shoe and right shoe. And over the course of time, that causes about a 27 millimeter, almost a 2 centimeter change in their pelvis, which up in their head is about a 5 centimeter change, or almost 2 inches. Well, 2 inches, if I cock my head to the side 2 inches, you're going to notice it. Well, their body's made the adaptation, but unfortunately they were having pain. So we want to make sure that the heels are even, and we measure them heel to heel to make sure that you're not wearing false orthotics or heel lifts. So in the case of this shoe, I look at the very first, I look at the bottom. I want to make sure that carbon's backed up. So black to black, then white to white, then blue to blue, then white to white on the first line, and white to white on the second line, then blue to blue, and then the counter seam all the way up the top. I want to make sure that everything matches up. I want to get them on an even surface no matter where I go to buy shoes. Number 5, air technology. This isn't just limited to Nike anymore. Almost all lines have a gel air or spring technology involved. Air technology is pretty fashionable, but it's not very supportive. It allows the foot to wobble, and so the muscles have to contract to keep the joint stable. And so you could be walking around all day at work or school, and then all of a sudden you go do something else and you break down. Whether that's high school, you see a lot of stress fractures, which are not the coach's fault, not the fault of the school for having an improper place to work out, like the inside of a high school when they need to be running on grass. No, they just actually break down the legs so that they're already fatigued. So if you went and were wanting to work out, but yet all day long you're walking around in these shoes that are breaking down your feet, and this isn't just limited to air technology. I mean, heels do that too, and slippers do that too, and loafers do that. They break down the foot. The muscles will become fatigued, and it's highly susceptible to whatever they're doing and whatever muscle or joint they're supporting to be susceptible to injury. So this is an example of air technology. If you have gel or air that's enclosed and I can't see it, it's probably okay. If you have gel or air that's sitting on the outside, like we can see this, I can see right through that shoe. I can take my finger and push up underneath it just like you can with a spring. And if I can push into it and that shoe moves, there's no way it's going to support somebody that's moving down the street. If you're 110 pounds and you're running down the street, you're going to have about 600 pounds of pressure that hits on that. So if I use my 20 pounds of pressure from my finger and move it, can you imagine what's going to happen to that foot with 600 pounds of pressure and what the body is going to do to make the adjustment to keep you safe? Not a good idea. So let's go to stability. There's 3 steps to this. Number 1, we want to avoid buying shoes by mail order. You have not tried those shoes on. You may have tried a similar pair out in a store somewhere, but they're not those shoes. Remember, all shoes aren't created equal. They could have been in a totally different group or lot number. So if you have 2 good shoes, and if you're, you don't have to do this with work shoes, but it would be a good idea to do them with athletic shoes, especially if you're a runner. You want to buy 2 pairs of the same shoes if you can, because you can rotate them. And one shoe will last approximately 300 miles, whether it's running or walking, before normal breakdown. If you have 2 pairs of shoes, it'll last about 500 miles. So the upfront cost may be more, but you almost get twice as much mileage out of that shoe. It'll save you more over the course of a year. Number 2, lace and untie your shoes each time. Simply pulling off your shoes or pushing one's toes to the end of the heel and then sliding them off actually creates strain on ligaments of the foot. Remember, we can stretch a muscle and it'll go back together. But if we stretch a ligament, it doesn't go back together for about 72 hours. So if somebody did that with their shoe and just slid their shoe off, they have about 72 hours that they need to do nothing so that the body will repair itself. Well, we don't usually do that. So you probably do it again. So you probably injure it again, and you probably continue to cause the same problem that's been going on again and again and again. This also breaks down the support of your shoes fast. So they're supposed to last 300 miles, and you do that, they might only last 100 miles. I've seen them last even less than 50, where somebody's had them for 2 weeks, and they have ruined them. There is an easy way to keep your children honest. Number 1, if you see them doing it, they need to buy their next pair of shoes. And if they already buy their pair of shoes, let's say they're a little bit older, or you're paying for somebody, they get to pay for their treatment. It's never failed me thus far. Number 3, correct lacing pattern. You should have a handout from your new patient packet that shows you how to correctly lace, and this will help to avoid dropping of the navicular bone, which sits above the longitudinal arch. We skip where there's a little vein that goes down through the very top of your foot that is right on that navicular bone in almost everybody's anatomical position. So when we skip the laces over that, when you take a step, it doesn't push down on it, so therefore the arch doesn't drop down. This saves a bunch of issues. As you walk, normally the laces will actually kind of compress, not necessarily tap the bone, but compress it down. And over time, this will allow the navicular bone to drop, causing fallen arch. Of course, a fallen arch contributes to knee, back, hip, and neck pain. Sandals will cause this. Loafers will cause this. High heels will cause this. Certain boots will cause this. Last thing, we want to avoid certain things. So, not lacing in your shoes will ruin your shoes and break them down. It'll break your foot down. This will cause you money, pain, and loss of function. Heels over 2 inches can be worn for a very limited time, but on average, heels over 2 inches, slipper heels, stiletto heels, they rotate the body. They put torque into the body, and this goes for cowboy boots too that are over 2 inches. And it does the same thing as not tying your shoes. It breaks down your foot and it causes a bunch of issues. And then, of course, long-term use is flip flops. I mean, if you're going to the beach or you live in a dorm and you're going to the shower, I understand. But long-term use of flip flop is a great way to be a. We want everybody to be a lifetime patient, but I don't want everybody to be a every single time I walk in the door, I gotta fix the same thing on you. I mean, if you get sick or you get a headache, something changes. It happens. Seasons change, food changes, life changes. But if we're fixing the same thing again and again and again, and it's because of your flip flops, you need to really reconsider what you're doing to yourself. And maybe we're just keeping you afloat, but what if I'm not there? Then you're going to break down. So we really want to keep the flip flops out of it. And I'm not against it. My kids have them, but they're for the beach. That's it. And then if you have to have an orthotic, make sure it's checked. So many individuals come into our office with orthotics, and they were checked either or given. They went to the store and they bought an orthotic. Not quite the same. That's a foot or a shoe insert, whether it says orthotic on it or not. And so many people have paid anywhere between $300 to $1,000 in orthotics, and they sat down and had the orthotics made, or they stood up and had the orthotics made through an imprint that they put. They weren't tested dynamically, like as in walking or running. Orthotics don't cost that much. A shoe insert costs anywhere between $30 to $60. An orthotic, most doctors will charge anywhere between $300 and $1,000. We charge $100, and if they don't work for you, we buy them back. So far in the last 6 years, we bought back one pair. So if you're going to have an orthotic, or I've recommended an orthotic, I highly recommend that you actually just stay within the system. It's a cheaper, easier way to go, and we actually back them up. I hope this has been a great experience for you with shoes and that you'll learn a lot. And if you have any questions, just go ahead. Feel free to contact us at healthsp.com, or you can email me at drtrites at yahoo.com. If you need to give us a call, call us at 866-398-8217. It's toll free. Press C. We'll leave a message and we'll get back to you. Thank you much. Look forward to helping you.